but it's not one that they're counting on, right? It's not one that they've been looking at as like, oh, this is an option. If she gets it, it would be a surprise and it would help. But it's not one where they're like, oh yeah, that's something we're hoping on. They did campaign in Arizona.
But a noticeable shift here in the mood at the Trump headquarters.
All right, Caitlin Collins in West Palm Beach at Trump HQ. Thank you so much. So, the first of the 7 battleground states to fall, CNN projecting North Carolina for Donald Trump.
This was the most probable pickup for Kamala Harris, if that was the world in which we were living. That is why Donald Trump went down there
Georgia
multiple times in the last 24, 48 hours.
I would have expected Georgia with
Atlanta,
campaign. To be honest.
And it clearly did not happen.
My map isn't. I'm not using my map. I'm gonna. If I go back to play with map, I'm gonna refresh it. So I'm not worried about that.
And just like we heard from Caitlin, that this
I don't even
is
think. I don't know if it's map flipped there or not. I had it red on my like main prediction.
We don't know what it means for the other
I think we'll know. Oh, we almost definitely won't know tonight, like for sure.
Blue wall is the
also, hi Kenny, welcome in. But
that path is just more and more narrow. I think we're seeing
the caveat I have to that is.
But also, so many people
we may know if it's a definite Trump win. We won't know a definite Kamala win tonight. That's for sure.
Big conversation about abortion. That is not where it's going. It seems like you're seeing that male turnout is starting.
But I don't think it's going to be that. Clear
I think
either,
a lot of us came into tonight wondering, was it going to feel more like 2016 or 2020? And 4 years ago, I was at Fox, and at almost exactly this moment, at 11:20 p.m., we made the very controversial call. They made the very controversial call of Arizona. And that changed the whole feeling, and that's one of the reasons that Trump
America has a problem. We were just talking a little about that too. All of the foundational reasons that were at this point.
Indication that maybe it was going to be different than 2016.
And also to a little bit of Turbo's point earlier too. I don't know if this is the point Turbo was making. I don't put those words in their mouth.
Right at this moment, this does feel more like 2016 than 2020.
It's just that it's out in the open and they're being obvious about it because they're less good at hiding what they're going to do. But it's still basically the same shit that all the other Republicans did anyway. They just weren't so obvious and maybe weren't so extreme. And they were a little bit more competent, but it's still very close to exactly how things have been going for a long time anyway.
Now suggests that it is there's a bigger
so it's not like we've made a massive shift
last time, and Donald Trump won it
but we have made a shift in the wrong direction
but
it's not as massive as it seems. Things weren't that great before Trump either,
and she is underperforming what Joe Biden
it was just
2020 and that ends up what it was a narrow edge for Biden.
It was marginally better in a lot of ways, but like it wasn't like it was
a narrow
great
defeat for Harris.
And the thing about North Carolina, and John has been talking about this and we'll do more at the wall, is you do have kind of a sense of the country in the state of North Carolina, in that there are growing minority populations and there is a growing sort of suburban, maybe more moderate
New Mexico
population in and around the big cities. And so that is why the Harris campaign thought with the dynamics of the country right now that she would have a
Michigan,
better
Pennsylvania,
shot.
Wisconsin.
But look, the headwinds of the
again,
economy,
the last votes are going to be more blue heavy,
people are feeling, the difficulty in everyday their everyday lives.
Yeah, she could not outrun that Biden economy.
Yeah, and the economy,
what is it?
Chris, that is
Georgia,
that is what
one of the
people are
states
feeling every single
really,
day. I mean, we
really
were
close
talking
margin for
earlier
Biden,
about
and she's
whether
not
or
performing quite to where Biden was performing.
Sort of women and the idea of this being the first post-Roe presidential campaign was going to supersede how people felt when they were buying eggs and milk. And
talking about basic stuff for the most part. Curious what they're talking about. We'll see.
Well, and I think it goes
back
to
Kamala.
what
It
David
just didn't sit right with me that we have someone who can consider following the presidency. No, I agree. I did the same thing. We were talking a little bit about that too. That if she loses, I'm not going to blame anybody that chose to not vote for her.
We talked to David exactly.
People that voted for Trump, I will blame. But the people that didn't vote for Kamala because of valid reasons in a lot of cases, we were just talking about that like, I don't think putting the blame on them is putting the blame on the voter and doing this whole like, well, you have to vote for the lesser of the two.
Much to say and much to study about.
You just have to, and that a lot of like that was how Hillary Clinton's entire campaign.
Or whether this was.
Hillary Clinton's entire campaign was basically like, yeah, duh, you're gonna vote for me. It's Trump as the other option. Of course you're gonna vote for me. And that's how she basically ran the whole fucking campaign. It was like, you vote for me because I'll be the first woman president. It was like, yeah, but what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do for me? Well, like, sure, that'd be cool, but I'm okay. And then Trump beat her. Kamala Harris is not campaigning that way. She's not, but she's, and the weird thing is she is campaigning on policy, but she's campaigning on right-wing policy. And so we were talking about that. It's kind of like you're getting to the point where it's like, well, again, the people you need to convince to come out, it's not that more people voted for Trump, like, oh, everybody voted and more people went to Trump. It's a lot of people who would have voted for you chose not to because you didn't convince them that you were going to be good for them. So I think that's an important message to take out of it. For sure, because there are a lot of reasons in that point to be like, look, she's also terrible on things that are really important to me, right? The biggest one I was talking about, we've talked about a few times, is Palestinian Americans. Her messaging on Gaza is not good. The fact that she ran on Republican immigration stuff also is not helpful when she let other things drop. And then the other big thing I was just talking about is she didn't counter message on why the crazy things Trump was saying were bad. So the people who are gullible or ignorant or not well educated will hear him say it's good and go, oh, well, if he's right, that does sound good. And if no one else goes, no, it's bad because of this, you're not going to convince them otherwise. That's another drop. So if she loses, it is on her campaign. For like, they could have won this. They could have and should have. They can and should win this. And if they lose, they could have and should have won this. They should be winning this by a lot already. It should already be a little bit clearer in her direction if she had run a better campaign. And that's I think an important thing to keep in mind too.
The time on our shows is that poor and low
if you have a valid reason to vote for him, then fine, but vote for him for reasons against him. But also, like, I don't know if there is a valid reason to vote for him is the crazy thing, but part of that is that counter messaging issue too. She didn't come out, or Tim Lawson didn't come out, or they didn't come out and explain and give counter arguments to convince people why what he said wasn't good. And a lot of people aren't going to do it themselves. You have to know that. You have to know that. Our education system sucks. Our people are typically less likely to look into things. They're less likely to research things themselves because they don't want to do all that work. That's your job. You're supposed to tell me. So I'll just listen to you. So that's a lot of her problem too.
In, the Hamptons, and you work in a plumbing business, and you're not necessarily poor. So I think we have to be careful in characterizing it as necessarily low-wage people voting against their interests and figuring out how to get them in the system at all.
This is a little bit like that too. This is a little bit of that discussion too.
NBC News can make a projection of a winner in the governor's race in the great state of Washington. Do we have that? You guys didn't know that's how I usually do it, right?
That's how you make it happen.
NBC News projects that the governor's race in Washington, the Democrat.
There's no valid reason it's hard to vote for him. Well, there is a valid reason. There's valid reasons to vote for him. There's a valid reason if you're racist and you just really fucking hate brown people. That's a valid reason. It's not a good, but if you know that's why, there you go. There's a valid reason if you are really fucking rich and he's gonna just let you get away with paying no fucking taxes and get shipping all of your work offshore. Because be very clear, he's talking about how they're taking our jobs overseas. He's not doing anything to stop them. He's gonna just give them more money to make more profits. That's a valid reason to vote for him. It's again an evil piece of shit reason, but those are valid reasons. But that's another indicator of the people that aren't in those scenarios, that again, they need to be explained to. They need someone who's going to message on why that's not good for them, and that didn't happen either. At least online was a lot of tearing down things he said, but not a lot about what she's going to do. It was more pointing fingers, not pulling fingers. And it was also there was a lack of, I think, explaining why. That's bad. Well, why? I don't know. Obviously, I'm not educated. Because I thought it sounded good. You're just saying it's bad. Of course you're going to say it's bad. Like, duh, you have to do that. If you don't then explain to people why, or you're right, explain why what you're going to do is better, it doesn't matter. That part of the messaging doesn't count. I'm so far left, I don't even believe in the system of government. I just want to know where all these third-party people have been in the intervening years fighting for rank choice voting. Yeah, okay, that's another thing. Jill Stein is a fucking swindler, just out here basically like, at this point she's basically a fucking con artist. The third party is, I think there is is it PSL, Progressive, what is it? I think they're relatively newer. Party for Socialism and Liberation, very, very small, but they are a potential third party that is like on their very, very small level, kind of doing the right kind of way to grow. The Green Party doesn't. The Green Party shows up every 4 years for the president and doesn't run for any fucking thing else. There's also, what is it, like there's like another third party that's like, I don't know, they might be a right-wing third party, who knows, but there are others. But yeah, I mean, that's another point too. They don't push for, so that was an argument that was made especially for the Green Party and Jill Stein, right? She's run in what, the last like 50 fucking elections? No, obviously not, but like she's run in the last a lot of elections, and everyone's like, oh, vote third party, vote for Jill Stein. There's a reason she doesn't win. There's a reason she doesn't even get enough voting and support to be considered high enough in the polls to be in the debates and everything. But also, her entire party doesn't have a track record of proving themselves. So like the only way to get into that is you should then have candidates in your party proving that you can win, proving that you can gain support. So you should have a bunch of Green Party representatives running for Senate and the House. You should have a lot of these people running in local elections. You should be organizing in these smaller elections to gain these local election supports, and then they'll be like, hey, the Green Party, that guy that ran for city council who did really good things for my kid's school, he was in that party. Wait a minute, she's in the same party? Okay, let me, like, I should pay attention to her. But they don't do that. I think PSL is doing a little bit of that, but they're very small, very early from my understanding. I will admit I'm not as well versed in them, so I don't have a lot of known context on them. But yeah, that's a 100% valid point. They don't do things. So the whole point, I want to know where all these third-party people have been. Basically nowhere. For a lot of them, not all of them. But yeah, that's super valid too. Hi, Thrifty, welcome in. One of the best quotes I heard was that Republicans see themselves as temporarily embarrassed future billionaires, and that's why they actively vote against policies that would benefit them, for fear that one day they'll become ridiculously wealthy and have to pay higher taxes, like, so you work at Spirit, not the airline. Yeah, so that's a big thing. It is, so part of it is the American dream, right? Everyone in this country has the opportunity to work their asses off, and then they'll have the perfect house with the white picket fence and the family with 2 kids and 2 cars, and they go on vacations once a year, and it's a beautiful life, and you'll get to retire. That used to kind of be vaguely approachable. It was mostly approachable for white people that left the city and went to the suburbs and bought really cheap housing when it was brand new because it was really fucking cheap. It's not really even a realistic thing anymore. They do weirdly inflate that to, like you're saying, be, well, what if I won the lottery? I could be a billionaire. Or also, he's really smart for becoming a billionaire, so why should he be punished? I wouldn't want to be punished if I was in his place. So that is another part of it. But it's, again, those are the fucking, like, dumbass finance bros and shit that are, like, maybe actually educated, but still going that way. They're aware of what they're doing, and they still think that it's, you know, whatever. And one of the asylum laws of Canada, right? Actually, apparently Canada, your Democrats would be considered very center party in Canada, 100%. They'd be super center in a lot of European countries too, if not right wing in a lot of European countries, to be honest. And usually I'm put in a position where I even have to participate in this 2-party circus, for sure, but I don't have the luxury of sitting out because trans people, especially kids, are going to literally die. I guess it's hard not to feel resentment towards people who don't also feel that same sense of urgency about marginalized people while claiming to be leftists. That's true. I also don't think our leftists are leftists. That's the other issue. And a lot of our leftists are still leftists that have a lot of prejudice and hate anyway. Because, again, our leftist is liberalism and neoliberalism, like you were saying. We don't actually have progressives. We don't have democratic socialists. I mean, there are people that feel that way, but we don't have actual parties that represent us in that way. And those are the people typically that do things for the people, so then they focus on the people and they are aware of who the people actually are and ways to help the marginalized people. Realistically, liberalism doesn't do that. Our left party doesn't do that. They don't. There might be some representatives in Congress that do it, but that's not the true core of the party. Clearly, the party that took over Harris's campaign obviously didn't consider any of those things. And they're more right-wing than Joe Biden was in the way they're campaigning in a lot of ways. Joe Biden actively spoke about trans people. Kamala Harris hasn't really done that. I don't think that she's anti-trans, but I also don't think she's been campaigning as pro-trans. I also think that, like, Donald Trump's aggressive anti-trans messaging is also a little bit wild. It should have been enough of a motivator too to push people to vote in the opposite direction, because a lot of people, even there's been a lot of, I've watched a lot of coverage of people kind of going to these rallies and asking questions, and when they do talk about trans issues, a lot of times they will go up to people and be like, oh yeah, I don't understand that I don't like that, I don't want my kid to be trans. Like, well, if your kid had a trans friend, what would you do? Like, well, I wouldn't like it, but I guess I'd have to figure it out. It's like, well, so do you think that a law banning all trans, we're like, well, no, they should be allowed to do what they want, just don't bring it to me. So even the people that are anti-trans and transphobic, even those people as constituents are like, oh, well, yeah, I don't really care, like, yeah, I guess they should be able to do whatever they want, like, as long as you don't make me do it, whatever, like, duh, that's not gonna happen. But the fact that the people that represent us, that we have to vote for, you're right, or have to vote for, but you have to vote for because it would be even worse the other way, they aren't that good either, is the big issue. Online leftists call Democrats shit libs, and they have some very valid points for set so far back. Yeah, true leftists. When you say the word leftist and you mean it, not leftist like the party that is the leftist party. Yeah, that's valid. That's true. I'm so used to when people say leftist, they mean Democrats. I'm like, well, not really. I don't know why this. What is this? Stand by for projection? They're about to project
townships, but in nearly 1,000, 993 right now. This will change as we go through, but Donald Trump is overperforming, and look at where they are. He's mostly performing in red areas. His vote is getting higher in the areas where he wins elections. Yes, there are some blue places where he's overperforming, but just look at battleground Pennsylvania. Look at all these red counties, places that Trump wins, where he's overperforming by 3% or more.
So
what
interesting
he did
thing.
In 2020. Then you come out
pause
here.
This. Can I pause? Oh no, it just stops it. Interesting thing though, it's about the CNN coverage versus the MSNBC coverage that maybe I
look
am
in the
hopeful
areas.
about,
Those are his base areas. He's getting more. Same over here in battleground Wisconsin. So the former president of the United States, given up for dead, Jake, after January 6, 2021.
In Hawaii, there is a projected winner, Kamala Harris.
Hawaii, shocker.
All right. Don King, thank you so much.
They went to Philadelphia, and those collar counties that Kornacki is talking about,
polling places are about to close in Hawaii,
they were showing that blue gain and that she was performing a lot better in those states than even Biden was, which has not been the case in some of the other places. That's a kind of a good sign. CNN is not reporting on that, but MSNBC is reporting those numbers. That's kind of interesting, and maybe a possible cause for flexibility and reason to be hopeful.
Between them, with 93% of the vote in Georgia.
We'll see.
In Pennsylvania, too close to call. 84% of the vote is in. Just over 200,000 votes between the two candidates in Pennsylvania. In Michigan, it's too close to call. 44%
it's closer, but it's still not great.
Difference of about 100,000
they're only
votes
40%
between them.
in. Michigan
Wisconsin,
is probably likely
it is too close to call. We've got 3/4 of the vote in, just under 90,000 votes between the two candidates.
That's close enough with 25%.
Arizona, it's not too close to call. It is
Pennsylvania's
too
way
early to
too
call.
close.
You see just over half the vote
Pennsylvania's
in.
way too fucking close.
Also in Nevada, it is too early to call. We've got 2% of the vote in Nevada. All right, let's go over to, let's look at where the Senate stands right
red.
now, actually.
Is that a typically blue region of Texas?
Forgive
I'm not familiar with
in the Senate race
I'm
in
familiar
Hawaii,
at the state level, I'm not familiar
just
county by
closed at
county.
midnight Eastern time.
Because if
NBC News
a
projects
traditionally
the Senate
blue,
race in Hawaii
close to
at
the
this
border
point
area in
as
Texas
too early to call.
flipped
This is Democratic
and
incumbent
had more
Mazie
reds,
Hirono.
more
Sorry
Trump
for my
support,
confusion there for a moment. I
it
thought
doesn't.
we were going right to this slide.
It's not a great indicator for
this is where
Arizona.
the
It's not a
Senate
great
stands
indicator
at
for
this hour. There are
even
still
Nevada,
10 uncalled Senate seats, which is a lot. Republicans have a net gain of 2 already. That's in Ohio. Sherrod Brown's seat. They flipped to Bernie Moreno, and that is in West Virginia, where Jim Justice picked up a seat that was previously held by independent.
It is significantly easier to organize against Harris to get motion. The counter to that is getting the motion under a Democratic president is typically less likely because most people go, oh great, cool, and then they go back about their lives for 4 years. Whereas like if Trump is president, a lot of them go, hold on, wait, and so I think it pulls that margin a little bit closer than it really is. Only that's not me saying that it's better, it's me saying there's less doom and gloom. It's not as bad as
and again, the
it can
context for this
seem,
is where things stand in Philadelphia right now is that Trump is running so far 4 points above where he finished in 2020. Again,
but that is a good point I heard someone making. I was like, and it does make sense. When there is a Republican in power and in office, it is more likely to get more people involved in organizing. More organization, less flexibility, versus more flexibility but less organization and pushing that flexibility with basically similar outcomes. Still, I do still agree with you. I do still think Harris is still more likely to be someone that you can actually push on and be the candidate that, even though she sucks on actually speaking out and protecting communities that she should be, she would be easier to get in touch with and make listen. But also, based on the topics she ran on, that might not even necessarily be true. It does mean that there's probably more people that are close to her that'll be more likely to be able to, like, I get what you, I do agree with you. I think I'm trying to kind of talk through a little bit of the points that I've heard and seen a little bit of like why that's a little bit closer than it seems. It's not so drastic. Again, also to your point, Trump isn't that far off from the way older Republicans used to run on certain issues like that too. Not all of the issues. Trump is terrible on all of them, but on LGBT issues, religious issues, certain other things, racist related issues, Republicans were kind of like that already too. So it's not like we're not taking as humongous of a bad step, but we are still taking bad steps in both of them, to be honest. But
dense counties, and I'll flag a couple things. We got
he's talking about these.
in Delaware
CNN
County
really
right
have
now.
these.
Of these core collar counties, this is the most Democratic. It's the most diverse, most blue collar of these sort of.
Like, did she gain extra votes here? Or she lost
Chester,
in the
of Montgomery. Now, in 2020, Joe Biden won here by essentially 27 points. Getting close to all the vote in here right now, and it sits at about 24.5. Not Harris, not at the Biden level. And keep in mind, again, this is very clear in Pennsylvania right now. Generally in these counties, the vote by mail is all reported out early, and what remains is the same day vote that's Republican leaning. So in all these counties, you just see Trump incrementally improving with each update, and Harris is now almost 2 points under where Joe Biden got in this core Democratic county 4 years ago. Next door in Chester County. Now this is like more significant drop off for Harris from Biden, but Chester County, unlike just about every other county in Pennsylvania, they are waiting until the end of the night, they say, to release their vote by mail. So let's see when the vote by mail comes in Chester County.
Would we like a break?
Can get back and surpass
I did say if we needed it, I could do a couple of little gaming breaks. We could do some distraction breaks. We could jump into something and then come back to it.
And again, we've
if
got
we
the
would
vote
like
by
that.
mail. We're
if
waiting on the same day, and already Harris is now
or do you
a point behind where Joe Biden
me to say here
finished in
you
this
can kind of
county
bounce in and
in
out?
2020.
I'm trying to see what is the most useful and the most beneficial to
It's
everybody.
more blue collar, certainly than
if this is still better than trying to like look up the websites and stuff, then great.
Now about half the vote is in here.
I just want to I want to check in. The goal of tonight was to make this less horrible feeling, regardless of how it turns out, and make this a little bit easier to digest, a little bit easier to
here, the battleground.
to sit
You're
through.
seeing it. This
so
was such a
I want to
close
make sure we're
race in
doing that. That is the
2016.
goal of tonight.
Democrats made a significant jump here in 2020.
Force us to eat something else on there. Yes, do that. Take care of yourself.
So far, you're seeing
if
that
you're
in
feeling
Bucks
overwhelmed
County as
too,
well. We also said
don't
we
feel
were
like
in
obligated to come in,
Allegheny
but we'd
County,
love to
Pittsburgh,
see
in
that.
those
I've
inner
been
suburbs,
loving
huge Democratic
our
area. We're coming
discussions
close to
here
all
because
the
I feel
voting,
like we've got a lot of the
94%. We are
same
super close
kind of
right now.
thoughts
And again,
with
let me just
different
show you.
perspectives, which
In
are
2020,
definitely good
Biden
and
essentially
great.
got 60%.
Taking a break now for
Harris is very
yeah.
close to that, but she's
Since
not
we're
quite
lectures,
at
I'll
that
take
level.
less
And
else
Democrats won
That's true. We can watch a
over
little of that.
60% here, given everything I'm showing you about these Trump gains, especially in these counties with significant Hispanic populations. It becomes essential for Democrats that Harris in these areas overperform where Joe Biden did in 2020. Now, there may be some vote-by-mail ballots left, we're told, in Allegheny County, but we're talking about maybe 1,000, something like that. Very small amount, nothing on the order of what you've got there in Philadelphia. So, again, this is a place where Democrats want big gains, and frankly, the way this is playing out tonight, need big gains, given everything else I just showed you.
She's not making big gains in any of these
85% of the
outside
vote
places.
now in Pennsylvania.
So
about
she needs to
170,000
win
vote difference.
these
See,
core
I
places
guess
like
it came in
Philadelphia
there.
and Pittsburgh.
It did. There you go. That vote by mail update, it looks like, came in Philadelphia as we were going through this.
That's
and
a
you
very
can see,
nice
look
bump.
at that Harris margin, how much that jumped, basically up to 350,000.
I don't know. I want to see what it is compared to
And there
Biden.
is, as
Remember,
Jacob
Biden
said,
won, Clinton
another
lost. That's
batch
why
of
they
mail
compare to
that's gonna
both
be
of them, because
reported
they're
out
also both
tomorrow
against
morning.
Trump. It's
So
very,
another jump
very
like
unique
this
comparison we're able to
expected
do.
come that did not
As long
Trump's
as she is
number
above
down,
Clinton,
did not
even
his
if she's below
percentage
Biden,
down
she
to
still has a
20.8.
chance.
It was at
If
about
she's below where
22
Clinton
before,
was,
but
Clinton lost
again,
Pennsylvania.
He is still
So
running
we have to
3
keep,
points
that in mind.
north
Clinton
of
was
where
way,
he was in
way worse,
Philadelphia
so.
back in 2020. So let's see that final. It's
I
gonna
would
be a
love
while
to
till
see
that
her
make it
above
until that
Biden's
final,
numbers,
vote
though,
by
because
mail
that
update.
means great.
This one took Trump down.
I mean, there's more people voting this time too, but
to the level
Biden
Democrats
won.
want him at there.
So
And
if
we
she's
can
close
just
to
take a trip
him,
down quickly to
then
Georgia
she's
because we've
likely
got
going to win. You
some
know, that's
more
kind of why they
counties
keep
that are
doing that
basically
comparison.
filled in Georgia now, 93% of the vote, and you do see that margin for Trump has come down a little bit. It's just under 120,000 votes, his lead statewide. Not a lot of votes left here, but one place we finally got clarity in here is Gwinnett County. This is a giant one, more than 1 million people in that core Atlanta metro area. Not all, but almost all the votes here right now. And again, let me just show you. It was 18 points for Joe Biden in 2020. Right now,
that was my goal, right? I wanted to be an easier to
Clinton
consume
won this thing by only about 6.
place for
Margin
people to come in and
exploded
check
for
in,
Democrats 20, and
people
they
to come
wanted
in
to take
and get
that
information
next step
in a way
forward
that's a
in
little bit easier to
2024, again,
follow, less
offset
anxiety
what has
inducing.
been one of the
Watching
stories
this
tonight,
nonstop
we don't
is
really show it because these counties are all
just
so
speedy,
individually
constant,
small, but I could
and a
just
little bit
take you
crazy,
through
right?
dozens of counties that you
so.
see in red here where it's a Trump gain of 2 points, of 3 points, of 2 points, of 3 points, and you add those all together and put them together. That's a big reason why Trump has amassed this lead statewide. We've also got
That's
a
why
little
they've
bit more
been doing
now
that in Pennsylvania
out of
too.
DeKalb County, you know, some of this county
Even
here
if she
is
wins the
inside
city by the same
perimeter,
amount,
large
all the
black
little tiny
population,
losses
large
will add
population
up
of
when they were already
college-educated white
close.
voters. Not quite Harris hitting that number that Biden
Again,
hit here in
underperforming
2020.
Biden.
Massive win for here, but not quite hitting it. Still some votes to come, though. Democrats want to get more, desperately need more out of there.
Possible, still possible.
You know, this is this is as core Democratic a county as you get. And again,
shocker
Harris
right away against Clinton
basically
was
level,
wild.
but a tick
It was,
under
but I
where
also
Joe
I
Biden was in
remember, and that was an
2020.
election. So that was an election that I was very tuned in for, but I was definitely not as experienced in watching elections. And I remember thinking it was like the last 3 months of the campaign, she fully never went back to Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. And I kept being like, that's weird. That feels like a bad call. She's just betting. And again, it's how she campaigned too. Duh, vote for me. You have to, because you can't vote for Trump. And then she acted that way. She went down to Arizona and Nevada, and she stayed in those areas. I think she went to Texas a bunch. She went to, and I don't even know if she went to Georgia, but she stopped going up there at all because she's like, duh, we're going to win that because you have to vote for me. And she lost it. And I remember thinking that feels like a wrong call. And I wasn't even at the time, I was not fully clocked into seeing a lot of this yet. That was the first one that I really, really stuck in and paid attention to. And she did. She ended up losing those really badly. This time around, Kamala has been running a shit ton of effort in those areas, especially Pennsylvania. But her national campaigning and speaking and focus has not been enough to back that up. If she hadn't done that, it would be even worse. It would be worse than probably Clinton, or at least the same. So obviously that paid off, but she still did some things to hurt her in the long run, I think, in the way vote for her. That was the weirdest movie. I was literally, I remember watching that, and again, like I said, being less involved and less knowledgeable. I'm not even that I'm crazy knowledgeable now, but I definitely was less then. Being like, what do you mean she hasn't gone back there in 3 months? Oh, and the election's coming up, she's still not going back? And then, of course, she lost, like, all of them. Didn't she lose, like, all 3 of those? She at least lost Michigan and Pennsylvania, didn't she? Did she lose Wisconsin too?
More than 80% of the vote in, 59.
Increased minimum wage, earned paid sick time. These are also good signs.
Again,
these are also things to keep in mind. These are also wins.
Lots of different states over the course
minimum wage and earned paid sick time is now the law of the land in a state like Missouri.
Absolutely opposed to
a lot of abortion protections are passing in a lot of states. A lot of policies and things at the state level are going in good directions. That is still also something to think about and consider as wins, as positive signs.
The Democratic Party, Vice President Kamala Harris ran along.
Another point to what we were talking about in how our representation sucks, with the fact that our 2 parties are both shit, kind of, or not even really kind of, is when you look at polling, things that are important to look at when you think about, like, oh, America sucks and all Americans suck, and, like, it's still kind of true as far as, like, the way we still vote, obviously, in ways and we don't know how to think for ourselves. But if you look at polling on things like abortion, if you look at polling on immigration, if you look at polling on things like workers' rights and benefits that should be guaranteed by the state and things like that, there are very large majorities across the board, including Republicans, that think those are good ideas. So the populace still does overwhelmingly, in a lot of ways, support things that are not being represented. So those are things to pay attention to kind of keep yourself a little sane and be like, okay, it's not all horrendous. It's not the end of the world. There are still generally large sections of population that still believe in good policies and good things. We just need someone that represents them and communicates those to win. Obama